Samuel Morse. Samuel Morse was a polymath who studied mathematics and science at college, supporting himself selling the works of art he painted. He became a renowned artist and took part in the invention of the telegraph. Samuel Finley Breeze Morse was born on April 27, 1791 in Charlestown, Massachusetts, USA. His father was Jedediah Morse, a geographer, author, and Calvinist pastor who moved in prominent circles and was a friend of George Washington. His mother was Elizabeth Ann Finley Breeze. His parents had 11 children, only 3 of whom survived infancy. Their eldest child is the subject of this article, and although he is now generally known as Samuel Morse, they knew him by his second name, Finley. Samuel Morse received his schooling as a boarder at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, from where, aged 14, he proceeded to Yale College in New Haven, Connecticut in October 1805. From early childhood, he had drawn pictures for pleasure. Now he blossomed as an artist, helping fund his education by selling paintings. He did not charge his friends for portraits he painted for them. At Yale, he studied a broad curriculum including chemistry, natural philosophy, French, Greek, geometry, and geography. His fellow students gave him the nickname Geography. He wrote at the time about how he found the subject of electricity particularly interesting. In 1810, aged 19, he graduated from Yale with Phi Beta Kappa honors from the most prestigious of America's honor society. In 1811, Morse entered the Royal Academy of Arts in the United Kingdom's capital city, London. He studied Renaissance art and created his own works of art. He returned to America in 1815 and became a highly successful artist, painting prominent citizens such as former U.S. President and Founding Father John Adams. In 1826, aged 35, he helped found the New York City's National Academy of Design, serving as its president from 1826 to 1845 and 1861 to 1862. In 1825, Samuel Morse was in Washington, painting a portrait of the Marquis de Lafayette when a horse messenger delivered a letter telling him his wife had died. Morse immediately returned to his home in New Haven to find she had already been buried. This experience left him with a determination to speed up long-distance communication. In 1830, in Albany, New York, Joseph Henry discovered that utilizing high voltages allowed him to transmit electric current over larger distances than previously possible. In a moment of inspiration, he realized he could combine his discovery with the electromagnet. Henry was also a brilliant early pioneer of electromagnetism to transmit a signal. His students at Albany Academy gathered around a bell and saw Henry cause it to ring from 1,000 feet, that is, 305 meters away. The electric current traveled along 1,000 feet of wire, activated an electromagnet which attracted a metal pivot, ringing the bell. With more work, Henry extended the transmission distance to about a mile. Henry had demonstrated 2 potentially useful new devices, the telegraph and the doorbell. He did not attempt to patent these. He thought of himself as a pure scientist, not a financially driven inventor. In 1832, returning from a trip to Europe, Morse met Charles Thomas Jackson, who demonstrated an electromagnet to him. This was when Morse, even mindful of arriving back in New Haven to find his wife already buried, first had the idea of a telegraph. The telegraph Joseph Henry demonstrated at Albany could not work over the long distances required for a fully practical telegraph, but Henry overcame this problem. The key to longer distance transmission was a device called the relay. A relay is a switch that is opened or closed by an electromagnet. In a telegraph line, a relay takes a signal arriving from one circuit and retransmits it to another circuit. In this way, a long telegraph line can be made up of much shorter, individually powered lines, each linked by a relay. Henry demonstrated a primitive relay to his students at Albany, but he did not publish any details. Professor Leonard Guile, a chemistry teacher at Albany, passed news of Henry's relay to Samuel Morse. In 1838, with the help of Gale and Alfred Vail, Morse devised and introduced more sophisticated relays at frequent intervals in a wire line and sent a message 10 miles, that is, 16 kilometers. For several years, Morse was unable to get funding to scale up his system. However, in 1843, Congress finally approved $30,000 to build a 38-mile, that is 61 kilometers, telegraph line along the railroad between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. On May 24, 1844, Morse sent a message, "What had God wrought?" from Washington to Baltimore. His system could transmit 30 characters a minute. Within 6 years, the United States had 12,000 miles, that is 19,000 kilometers, of telegraph lines in operation. Just as the telegraph would convey information from one place to another, Leonard Guile conveyed information about relays from Joseph Henry to Samuel Morse. In order to send messages along the wire, Morse devised a code in which each letter in the alphabet was represented by a particular number of electrical clicks. The codes were sent as electrical pulses of different lengths. The code was improved by Morse's assistant and financial backer Alfred Vail. Morse wanted his telegraph system to deliver a permanent message. It did so in the form of permanent indentations, dots, and dashes on the paper tape. Morse was awarded patent for his invention in a number of countries. However, his claim to have invented the telegraph was often ignored, so he did not receive the royalties he ought to have. In 1854, 10 years after Morse transmitted his famous message from Washington to Baltimore, the United States Supreme Court decided he was entitled to a monopoly. The monopoly applied only to one aspect of his invention, repeater circuitry, in which a relay takes a signal arriving from one battery-powered circuit and retransmits it to another battery-powered circuit. The use of individual battery-powered circuit connected by relays allowed a message to be transmitted over large distances with minimal degradation of the signal strength. With the Supreme Court's decision, Morse began receiving royalties and became very wealthy. Morse was a strong supporter of Protestant Christianity and the fierce opponent of Roman Catholicism. He campaigned to restrict the immigration of Catholics into America. He did not oppose slavery. A wealthy man, he donated large sums to causes he supported, such as the founding of Vassar College for Women in 1861. He was a college trustee from 1861 to 1872. Morse also financially supported Yale College, Protestant churches and Bible societies, and struggling artists. Morse married Lucretia, Pickering Walker on September 29, 1818 in Concord, New Hampshire. They had 3 children, Susan, Charles, and James. Lucretia died shortly after the birth of James in February 1825. Morse married Sarah Elizabeth on August 10, 1848. They had 4 children, Samuel, Cornelia, William, and Edward. Samuel Morse died aged 80 in New York City on April 2, 1872. He was buried at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York City.